Ricky Greenwell here, bringing you another makeup tutorial, and for today's video we're going to be looking at broken noses, and my model for today is Joe. So I'm going to start off with doing a makeup to show just the effects and the power of a standard makeup application. Here I'm just using some character shadow, and I'm actually just using a flat makeup brush, and I'm just reshaping Joe's nose, just utilizing some character shadow and character highlight. Here I've kind of taken a bend or hook shape, and here you can see that I start Joe's nose following the architect of his cartilage, and then I'm just simply moving and or altering that line to give a hook or broken shape to that nose. And I take and I blend my shadows down. And now I'm going in with my highlight or an ultralight and adding contour to the bridge of Joe's nose. And here I'm just taking a flat brush to stipple out the foundation brush, just to stipple out that character highlight. Here, same thing, just taking a clean brush and using that to blend, as well as blending off with my ring finger. So I'm just going through and reinforcing some of those shadows. And here we have an example of just a simple using character highlight and character shadow to give the illusion of a hook or broken nose. Okay, now I'm going to go through and we're going to be doing a broken nose. And this time we're going to be utilizing scar wax and working with some three-dimensional SFX style makeup. I'm starting off by utilizing just a little bit of matte adhesive, and here I'm just taking a birchwood stick and I'm tapping out the area that I'm getting ready to place my molding wax into. So now I take roughly a pearl size piece of some nose and scar putty, and I'm placing that on the cartilage edge of Joe's nose, and I'm utilizing my fingers to kind of blend that or put it into place, having some of the matte adhesive to keep it in its location. And now I'm going through with a palette knife, and I'm going to use that to blend out. So if you've never worked with nose and scar wax, it can be incredibly tacky to your fingers, especially if you tend to run rather warm. So having tools like a artist palette knife can help to blend things out. Having powder on hand to clean your fingers from the tack, as well as just some isopropyl alcohol to clean off any tackiness that comes into play. And here I'm just utilizing either a combination of the palette knife by raking off some excess product and or my ring finger just to kind of sculpt the shape. I'm using the palette knife to blend the wax around the skin, and I'm utilizing my ring finger to create the shape of the hook that I'm trying to create for the broken nose effect with Joe today. So now I have on my finger, I've taken just a little bit of castor sealer, just so that I have a little bit of slip to my working surface. And I'm going through and kind of shaping that my sculpt out. And what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to keep the cartilage intact as far as Joe's nose is concerned, and I'm keeping it right along that edge. So it's imperative that this become an extension of Joe's nose, but on the cartilage portion of that nose. So it needs to be applied to that bony process. Now I'm going through and utilizing a powder puff with a little bit of loose powder to take out any of that oil from the castor sealer and to get it prepped for some foundation. Here I'm just going in with just a foundation brush with some additional powder. And I'm utilizing a stipple sponge with no product on it to create a nice pour-like texture to my wax. And now I'm going through and starting my paint process. Same as what I did earlier, as I'm taking some character shadow and I'm readjusting my highlights and shadows and contours. So I'm adding shadow to that outer edge of the new appliance that I've added to Joe's nose. And then I'm also hooking it on the side that has no product on it. I'm hooking it into the nose. And here I'm just using a flat makeup brush to blend out my shadow. So I blended out my product with some character highlight or some character shadow, and here I'm just taking a little bit of castor sealer or castor oil and blending along my character shadow line. This is going to help blend the product onto the wax a little differently than what it would be doing as far as grabbing the skin is concerned. Now I'm going through with my highlight product and adding just a little bit of highlight down the bridge of the nose, paying attention to the shape and the correction of the hook that I'm trying to create. Now I'm just using some loose powder and a powder puff to set that makeup in place. So now I'm going through and adding just a little bit of foundation to Joe's nose and the surrounding areas to counteract some of the wax that's reading through. So here I just added a little bit of a blue undertone to get some of that capillary look back into the skin, and I'm adding some foundation back into it. So I'm looking for some of those undertones that I can be seeing within Joe's skin, and then kind of blending out, being sure to apply some of those tones just to the appliance portion. And here just using a large foundation brush and some powder. Dusting off with a clean brush. And here we have a finished application utilizing just character shadow and highlights, doing some color correction, and wax applied to Joe's nose to give the appearance of a broken nose. Now I'm removing some of the pigmentation that's going into the nose, and I'm going to be reworking this up minus the color, but keeping the wax intact. And I'm going to be going through and adding a scar effect. So this is going to be keeping along that same concept of doing a broken nose, but now I'm just utilizing my palette knife to do a cut wound into the nose. So here I'm kind of sculpting and shaping the wax on Joe's nose as I'm working. And I'm going through with a stipple sponge to add pour texture into my sculpt. And I'm going in with just a little bit of castor oil to help blend out any imperfections in my sculpt onto Joe's nose. Reinforcing my cut line with my palette knife and pulling off any excess wax that I will no longer need. So here just using my palette knife to clean off any excess areas. And I'm going to be going through and doing and recreating a bruise. So Joe is going to be having a black eye with a broken nose for this portion of the application. So I'm starting off with my blood red tone, and I'm stippling using a flat makeup brush to stipple out some of those undertones. Here I'm utilizing an orange stipple sponge to stipple out my makeup, utilizing both the stipple sponge as well as my ring finger to blend out my stippling. Going back in with my large flat foundation brush to add some of the broken capillary effect and some irregularity into my bruising. taking my ring finger to blend out. Here I'm going in with a dark, deep plum or deep purple, just to give me the deepest contour to my cut. Adding a little bit more stipple around some of my edges to help the blend and believability of the appliance. Adding just a little bit of blood red color right to Joe's lash line to give that bloodshot eye. Now I'm going through and powdering everything. My objective here is to make sure that I'm fully set, but it also is going to help press that powder or that product into the skin to give me the illusion that this bruise is pulling from underneath the skin. Taking a loose powder brush to dust off any excess product. And for my final touches, I'm taking an eyedropper filled with some stage blood and adding blood into my open cut. Adding a drop of blood to Joe's nose. And here we have our finished three-dimensional wound with bruising that's coming into place with a broken nose. I hope you learned something with me today, and remember, if you believe it's possible, you can make it possible.